person who invented the toilet was truly a genius. Not only could it be used solo in luxury, but also in sweet pairs, and even during the Roman Empire, dozens of people could queue up at the same time. At that time, ordinary households couldn't afford to build toilets. So, regardless of gender, people would go to public toilets to relieve themselves. Fortunately, public toilets were large enough back then to accommodate dozens of people at once. As a result, using the toilet became a new form of social interaction. But at the same time, it became a paradise for rats and cockroaches. Once people had finished their business, they would use a secret weapon, the sponge stick, for local cleaning. Then, they would rinse it in the foot-level water basin before returning it to the central wooden bucket. Since the sponge stick was communal, it was easy to spread various diseases. But noble toilets were different. Nobles had private restrooms, often built outside the high city walls. Some noble toilets even had solid wood toilet seats, though more hygienic than public toilets. They had deadly security risks. One day, the king was enjoying his usual toilet time when an assassin took advantage of the dark night to sneak into the castle. Climbing up through the toilet passage, he thrust a sharp spear into the king's most vulnerable parts multiple times, leaving the king to perish on the spot. Dying in the toilet was indeed an undignified fate. But when nature calls, one must answer. By the Middle Ages, people began building toilets in their backyards. However, these were just chamber pots, specially designed containers, or repurposed jars and bottles. After use, people would empty them into a cesspit near the kitchen, or simply toss the waste onto the street. Some even dumped it from above, to avoid unexpected blessings falling on their heads. People often carried umbrellas when going out, but if someone was caught outside and suddenly needed to go, those with means would opt for a roadside mobile toilet. This led to a unique profession at the time, toilet attendants. They carried 2 buckets, one for solid waste and one for liquid. And for a small tip, customers could hide under their cloaks to relieve themselves. Those without money would just find any convenient spot, public fountains, hidden alleys, or even the statue of the king. Thus, in that era, Europe was truly covered in gold, offering a unique sensory experience. Never before had a toilet been built so high, standing dozens of meters above the ground. The reason? The king wanted to avoid being assassinated while on the throne. However, he underestimated the patience of assassins. One night, as usual, the king was squatting comfortably. A stealthy assassin seized the moment, sneaking into the castle, braving the falling waste from above, climbing up through the toilet passage, and using a sharp spear to repeatedly stab the king's most vulnerable area. Thus, the king met his end, right on his royal toilet seat. Such a painful enlightenment was a privilege only the nobles could afford. Ordinary people couldn't even build toilets at home. So, regardless of gender, they had to rely on public toilets. Luckily, public restrooms back then were large enough to accommodate dozens of people at once. Going to the toilet became the most fashionable social activity for commoners. If one was lucky, they might even make a rodent friend. Once people finished their business, they would use a secret weapon, the sponge stick, for local cleaning. After cleaning, they rinsed it in the foot-level basin and returned it to the central bucket. Then, the next person would use it. Since the sponge stick was communal, it was easy to spread diseases. By the Middle Ages, people gradually realized this problem and started building backyard toilets. But these were still just chamber pots, specially designed containers, or repurposed jars and bottles. After use, people would dump the waste into a cesspit near the kitchen, or simply toss it from above. These heavenly blessings would randomly land on some unlucky soul. So, smart people always carried umbrellas when going out. But if someone was out and suddenly needed to go, what could they do? Those with means would use a roadside mobile toilet, another unique profession of the time. These attendants carried 2 buckets, one for solids, one for liquids. For a small tip, customers could hide under their cloaks to relieve themselves. Those without money would just find a random spot, public fountains, hidden alleys, or even the statue of the king. Thus, in that era, Europe was truly covered in gold, offering a unique sensory experience.